It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Hey, heidi ho, hee. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Thank you for joining us. Nice to have you with us. We've got two guests today. First up is Ross Jeffries. He's known as the living legend of seduction. Ross Jeffries is the founder and creator and master teacher of the worldwide pickup and seduction community. Ross has taught, coached, and mentored over 60,000 men around the world since 1988, guiding them to the success with women that they truly desire and deserve. He's been featured on CNN, Fox, NBC, the BBC, Playboy magazine, Rolling Stone, Huffington Post, Style for Men, and many others. He will be up first, followed by Rick Karlsrusher. And Rick is an author who wrote a couple of books, one called Standoff and one called A Story Almost Told, which is the story about trying to get Standoff made into a movie. Very interesting guy. He will be up second. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get to the interviews. September 4th is Labor Day. Our Monday Labor Day show is going to be an all-music special featuring 12 artists from World Arts Music. Thank you to Dwight Wells again for putting this together for us. We have 12 indie artists and 12 tracks that we're going to play, so very excited for that. That'll be again Monday, Labor Day, September 4th. If you like what we do here at the Douglas Coleman Show, and you'd like to see us get to a 2-show-per-week format, please help us out. Go to patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. And for as little as $1 a month, you'll be doing us a great service so we can get the resources we need to get to a 2-show-per-week format. Again, that's patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back with Ross Jeffries. Okay, please welcome my guest, Ross Jeffries. Hi, Ross. How are you?
Well, other than the fact that one of my baby kitty cats is sick and it's a vet, I'm very concerned with her. I'm doing fantastic here in America's finest city, San Diego, California.
Oh, I love San Diego. Great place.
We all love San Diego. I moved here from L.A., and I don't miss L.A. a bit.
But you're still close enough to L.A. that if you have to go there, you can easily get there.
Well, as a matter of fact, I usually go up every other weekend to see my family, who I'm madly in love with.
Well, sorry about your cat. I'm a big animal lover myself, and believe me, I know. If one of them gets sick or goes to the doctor, it's like your children. You know, it's the same
She is my child. I've been with her 17 years.
17 years. Oh, my God. Wow, that is a long time. Anyways, thank you for coming on the show. Very glad to have you.
It's my pleasure.
I was intrigued by your bio that was sent to me by your people, and glad that you could come on. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, it mentioned the movie Magnolia and the Tom Cruise character, that this was based on you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did they consult you for making that?
Well, not overtly, but covertly. When I went to the movie, I went with my intellectual property lawyer at the time, Janine. I wanted to go out with Janine for a long time. She kept saying, "You're a client. I can't do it." And then when I found out the movie was coming out, I said, "Janine, this is your job." So I went to the movie, and I have to say that they captured the essence of what I'm like in a seminar. I do feel like I'm a superhero. Tom Cruise says, "I'm Batman. I'm Superman. I'm woo." And some of the stuff they said, like giving yourself a calendar and keeping a diary, and some of the things he said, are almost word for word steals. They weren't enough that I would sue them. I wouldn't sue them anyway because they did me a great service with all the publicity. But yes, it's true. I think Tom Cruise did a fabulous job. He's a stellar actor.
Oh yeah.
I just think I'm 6'2". He's 5'4". So they could have hired someone taller to play me.
But other than that, you agree that they captured the essence of you, yeah?
They captured the essence of the character that I teach through. You see, Ross Jeffries isn't even my real name, but my perception when I first started doing this is as Paul, that's my real name. I'm just another person. I can be ignored or shunted off to the side. But as a larger than life character, I can become a symbol, an ideal, a living legend for guys who need that kind of inspiration to rise up from the pit of their despair and their lack of confidence.
All right. So tell me a little bit about how you got started with all of this.
Well, my story is that no one would believe how sad my story is. Throughout high school and through almost the very end of college, I was a virgin. I could not get a date, but more important, I was loaded. I did get some dates, but I was loaded with self-loathing and shame about the way my body looked. I had absolutely no knowledge of how to attract women. My father made his memory be for a blessing, as we say in the Jewish faith. He knew nothing about women, and even if he did, he wouldn't have had time to convey it. He worked 3 jobs to put food on the table for 6 kids, and then 7 really, because my cousin Paula lived with us for a long time. So he was never around. The relationship he had with my mother was terrible. I had no guidance, so I was wandering lost and lost and lost. And I lost my virginity to a big fat girl from Wisconsin. And the last summer, I didn't complete my degree, so I had to go to summer school. So thank God for Megan Donovan. Wherever you are out there, Megan, thank you. And then I went like 6 or 7 years without being touched. And I remember being suicidally depressed. And I stumbled on a book called Frogs into Princes and another one called Transformations, both by these nutty guys, Richard Bandler and John Grinder, the co-creators of NLP, Neurolinguistic Programming. I thought, wait a minute. Hold on just a second. This is great stuff. I could use this to help out my own confidence and then use some of this stuff with women and see if it works. And sure enough, it did. And I thought, you know what? What am I doing working for a paralegal? Let's write a book. And I wrote my first angry book, which brings me a lot of shame because it was so angry. How to Get the Women You Desire into Bed, a down and dirty guide to dating and seduction for the man who's fed up with being Mr. Nice Guy. I'm a good copywriter. I learned from my mentor, Gary Hubbard. And then I started put ads in the back of men's magazines, and I started going on all the TV talk shows, and pretty much it exploded from there.
One of the things you've got on your sheet that I did want to ask you was, it said, why is it so important to avoid the dating game?
Yeah.
Tell me, what is your definition of the dating game, first of all?
Well, the dating game is this game of wall darts, not Walmart, wall darts, where you have darts and you throw it at the target and try to hit the bullseye. Only imagine you're in a dark room, you can't see your hand in front of your face, you're being spun around till you're dizzy, and then you're hung upside down by your ankles, and you have to throw the dart and get it in the centerpiece. For most men, or roulette is another metaphor, for most men, dating is a form of gambling. You're throwing that dart against the wall, or you're taking her out to spending a whole bunch of money trying to create the right ambiance. I teach my students dating is for women you're already sleeping with. So dating as a way of creating fascination, attraction, connection, it's not the most reliable mechanism. And you even see it in the technical vocabulary of dating, like, well, maybe I'll get lucky. If you were getting on board a flight from London to, say, Paris, and you stuck your head in the cockpit and you said to the pilot, how are we going to make sure that we really get to Paris? And he said, I don't know, maybe we'll get lucky. And he really meant it. He wasn't joking. You'd get off that airplane. So that's what I mean. Dating is a form of gambling, and it's not necessary. When you know how to use your language to shape a woman's emotions and lead her decisions, then it becomes irrelevant largely.
Well, do you think that all women are looking for the same thing? I mean, I think women are as diverse as men are in terms of what they're looking for in a mate.
There's what women say they want, there's what women think they want, and then there's what they actually respond to. As far as their criteria, some women may want a guy who's tall, some may want a guy who earns this, et cetera, et cetera. I get it. I completely get it. And not but. My message is beneath that level of the checklist, there's those primal drives and experiences that we all as humans long for. Fascination, connection, indulgence, feeling driven and swept away by passions that are irresistible. These are all things that we all like, and they're also primary female fantasies. So yes, there's cultural variances, and some women may be more career-oriented, and all that's observably true. And beneath all that, there's another level that I think all humans, male and female, long to experience. And I'm saying you can get my outrageous claim, my seemingly impossible claim, until you now stop and think, well, he's challenging me. Maybe some of what he's saying is true. My claim is that you can shape that through how you communicate.
Do you think technology has complicated the whole dating situation with people?
Yes, of course it has, and both in obvious ways and subtle ways. The obvious way is people now communicate through texting, and we have apps, not that I know anything about it, like Hookup and Tinder. I don't know anything about it. Fib. But on a more subtle level, on a much more subtle level, modern technology has given people attention deficit disorder.
Oh,
Maybe
true,
not
yeah.
psychiatric sense, but think about it. I challenge your listeners. Go out to a very heavily populated part of your town or city or whatever around lunchtime and notice how many people are walking around with their faces glued to their smartphones. I'm sure, Douglas, I'll bet $1,000 you've seen that today, have you not?
Oh, yeah.
You left your home.
Sure.
So people don't have attention spans the way they used to, and they don't give people much of a chance to make an impact. This is why I say to men, communicate in a way that conveys your masculinity and other traits that women find attractive, and make that impact very quickly, or you will get brushed aside. I'm not saying that in a critical, pejorative way. That's all humans, both genders, everybody, man, women, old, young. We're now more and more communicating through our devices rather than face to face. And we have more and more of this lack of attention span. I remember when commercials were 60 minutes long, 60 seconds long. Now on YouTube, you're lucky if it runs 30 seconds because advertisers understand people don't have the attention span, particularly online.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, those ads, they'll pay out to the person running the ad after 5 seconds. You know, you can say you can close this ad after 5 seconds.
Right.
Yeah. And as long as it goes for the 5 seconds, they'll get paid.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You get more if they watch the whole ad.
Well, I just put on a girl with big boobs jumping up and down for the first 5 seconds.
Well, if you can keep it on YouTube.
Keep her in the background subtly, maybe subliminally.
Now, I saw that you had 2 one-sheets. I was sent 2 of them. One looked like something for corporate marketing and sales, and the other one was for seducing women.
Right.
So you're basically doing speeches on seducing clients for sales to get them to buy whatever it is?
No, I wouldn't call them speeches. I would call them trainings.
Training. Okay. So seminars. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I call it is subtle words that sell. Communication into cash. Subtle words that sell. Conversations into cash without pushing, pressuring, or pitching. And so those are the trainings and the seminars that I do. Speeches I can do. If you want me to come and speak to your organization, I can do it, but it's far more fun for me to teach and have the interaction. So I like to come in and do trainings. And also I have seminars that people can come to. And essentially, look, the way I phrase it is this, is language, whether you want to seduce or whether you want to persuade or whether you want to sell, you have to shape people's emotions first. Because, and here's the big thing, if there's only one takeaway that people get, it's this. You're never selling your product or service. No matter how good your product is, no matter how good your service is, you're selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. That is a process that largely takes place on the unconscious level. People are not consciously aware of the real motivations or the real process and structure of how they make decisions. They only know the end result. So you're always selling decisions and good feelings about decisions. And that essentially is the same as when you're doing seduction. If you don't want to say sell, then say shape. You're shaping decisions and good feelings about decisions. And, not but, and most of the time, the decision process is done unconsciously. It's not done consciously. And to that extent, using communication that reaches down into the unconscious mind is opening the floodgates to the decisions, because the decisions are driven largely on the unconscious level. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. You're basically saying that whatever it is you're selling is irrelevant. The person that is going to buy and write the check to you has to really like you. You've got to sell that.
No, I'm not even saying that's true. That is true, but it's not the completion of what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's very true. I'm saying the process by which people decide that they want to buy is not something of which they're consciously aware. They're not consciously aware that they go into their imagination and they picture themselves in the home and they get a good feeling in the center of their chest, and then they have a little intuitive voice in their mind that says, yeah, this is a good thing to do, go with it. They're not aware that that's all taking place. It's taking place on the subconscious level. But there is imagine, let me do this because I teach a lot and train a lot using metaphors. I don't know, when you were a little kid, did you ever bake cookies or watch somebody bake a cake?
Sure.
Okay. When you bake a cake, there's a recipe. The recipe has to have the right ingredients in the right proportions. They have to be put in the right sequence to come out with a cake. And what I'm saying is at a much finer level of resolution, people have a recipe for making decisions and feeling good about them. That recipe is sort of like code in a computer. People aren't aware of the code. They just know they press the icon. I'm saying underneath the label decision is an entire little level of unconscious coding, if you will. And if you know how to access someone's process for making a decision, not their why, I don't care about their why, but their process, then it will trigger the behaviors of making the decision. Most of the time, people's conscious reasons are not the real reasons that they buy. And the other thing I'd say, and this is a really hard lesson for people to learn, but if you're in the financial services business or real estate or anything, basically, and I mean no offense, so take it in a learning fashion. Basically, what you're selling is a commodity like rice. There's nothing that particularly special about the commodity. So what matters then is the soft skills and how you can move people to make decisions and feel good about them.
Okay, so you're saying that you're teaching people how to actually discover the process by which the other person, the other party, makes their decisions?
You don't even have to discover it. You can do some clever things to access these subroutines. As you might call them subroutines or subconscious recipes. There's a way to use hypnotic language to access them and to evoke them, provoke them, whatever, however you want to call it. So, for example, if I said to someone, let's say I'm showing someone real estate, I don't know who your audience is. It's probably a big range and a population of different kinds of business people. But if I said, you're going to like me, you can trust me, and here's the reasons why, here's my track record, blah, 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 blah. People have seen it before, it's too specific. If you said something, and this is going to seem like nonsense language at first, and in a sense it is, but if I were vague, if I said, as we're doing this walkthrough of your home today, could you just make me one promise? Would you promise me that you'll share the features of this home that you think will help me get the best market price for you? Because I think that's the way we can both know a really great decision is going to be made today. Now, that is just going to sound like nonsense, but the unconscious mind processes it as, oh, okay, I've made a promise to him. I'm going to share something with him. It's what I call implied relationship words. Do you make a promise to people who you don't trust? No. Do you share things with people you don't trust? No. So the minute they buy into those words, they're unconsciously sticking you into the category of someone who they trust. So you can access it through clever language that provokes the unconscious, rather than saying, well, you can trust me, here's my track record, blah, blah, blah. See, the reason that doesn't work as much as it used to is people have seen it before. They've become very sophisticated and they're aware of it. So the bottom line message is this: to clarify everything and to make it simple and less opaque. Any response you want someone to have is dependent on an unconscious process that they do. If you know how to use your language in a hypnotic way, if you want to say it, or a unconscious communication way, in a subtle way, since my trainings are subtle words that sell. If you can do that, then people will take the actions you want them to take, because language structures consciousness, shapes decisions, and drives behavior. I don't know how I can put it any differently than that.
Okay, I think I'm following you.
It's a long answer. I like to talk a lot. I'm in the right business.
For some reason, while you were telling me about that, I was getting these images of people playing poker and somebody looking for the tell from the other one.
Yeah, but you can't find the tell when I do it. I like to teach my students float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Their minds can't resist the suggestions they can't see.
Okay. All right. So with you wouldn't even see the tell. Yeah.
No, there's no tell.
One last thing, and then we probably got to kind of wind this down.
Okay, that's quick.
There was something on here which I didn't understand, which maybe you can clarify. It says, what is a false profession of ignorance?
Oh, this is really, really good. So a false profession of ignorance. First, let's look at the function. What does a false profession of ignorance do? Is it gets rid of the notion that you are a smartass, that you know everything. It puts on the appearance of being humble. So if I walked in, I said, listen, I know you want me to be your financial services representative because look at all these awards on the wall, blah, blah, blah. What do you think the person's response is going to be? The prospect's response is going to be?
What do I think they're going to think, oh, well, this guy's an arrogant son of a bitch. Yeah.
But if I said something like this, and again, I recognize with your audience that this language seems strange. It's only because you're not used to it. It's like learning a new language, but you can do it. If I said, as we're getting to know each other today, I don't know at which points you'll stop and find yourself thinking, wow, he's an interesting guy. Maybe this is the person I want to go with. But as that's taking place, would you just promise me that any questions you have to help you feel good about what's going on today, you'll share with me? Now, that's so vague. Did I say anything specific? Did I give them any reasons why they picked me?
No.
But it appears to make sense. It's what we call in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It's semantically well-formed. And it's also saying, I don't know at which point you'll stop and find yourself thinking, this guy's really cool. I don't know at which points means it's a suggestion that they are going to do it. It's simply that you don't know when they're going to do it. It's called a presupposition of awareness. I know this sounds a lot of technical and complex, but in my trainings, I unpack them so anyone can do it after like 4 hours.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, again, I'm trying to use metaphors, but it does sound sort of like confidence gaining in a strange sort of way.
That is a piece of it, but with respect, it's a small piece of it. It's accessing the recipes that people uniquely have to make decisions and to buy. Of course, confidence is part of it. You can't do it. And here's the other slice of that cake. It's not enough to get people to trust you. You have to get them to trust their own ability to make good decisions. Because here's another takeaway. Nowadays, people don't know how to make a good decision. They just don't know that they're even making a good decision. So it's not just that you have to win their trust, which is true and always has been. You now have to get them to trust themselves that they're making a good decision. And all of this can be guided.
Well, it's all very interesting.
A little complex.
A little complex, a little much to digest in a quick.
I understand. I'm sorry, but I do unpack it. So
okay.
This is a brief interview. If I did a 4-hour training, it would be a different story.
Right. Well, then this is a good sort of teaser, if you will, for people to come to your website, which is what?
I'll tell you what. If you want to find out more about hiring me to come in and do training or speaking, go to Ross Jeffries Live. JEFFRIES. That's how it's spelled. RossJeffriesLive.com. Ross Jeffries, JEFFRIES Live.com. And it'll show you how to reach out and contact me for speaking or training or coaching. But I love coming in and doing trainings and doing seminars. I can speak too. The problem with speaking, not the problem, but speaking is a one-way communication. I'll do it, but I prefer the two-way communications with people.
So do you do as much sort of corporate stuff, seminars, as you do one-on-one counseling with guys who?
I will do one-on-one. I'll do one-on-one. I can do that. So you can find out all about how to do that. It's all on that page.
Ross, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. I know I sort of talk like a professor, but on the other hand, this is street fight stuff. This is the stuff that works in the street level.
Well, it's also a good interview for people that if they didn't quite get it the first time, they can listen to it again.
Yeah, it's very common that people tell me they'll listen over and over.
Yeah, and then it'll sink in after that. So that's good.
It'll sink in.
Yeah, it all works out. Ross, thanks again.
Remember, my trainings are called Subtle Words That Sell, Conversations into Cash Without Pushing, Pressuring, or Pitching. And I hope to see some of your listeners at one of those trainings.
Oh, I hope so too. And sorry about your cat. I hope everything goes all right. I love her very much.
We're waiting to hear more.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EPPS productionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me the spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Go listen, download, and subscribe to The Douglas Coleman Show. It's available at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. Also on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. The Douglas Coleman Show is an internationally syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Our focus is on music artists, but we also feature producers, authors, directors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining. Again, it's available today at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. You can also connect with them on Facebook at Douglas Coleman Show 1, follow on Twitter at Douglas Coleman 3, and you can even find them on TuneIn Radio. Again, that's the Douglas Coleman Show at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS, iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, and more. Go listen, download, subscribe, and share with your social networks today.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. See? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Wrong hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Rick Karlsruher. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Great, Douglas. Thanks for having me.
Great. Did I say that right?
You got it. You got it perfectly. You got it better than almost everybody.
Okay, good. Well, let's see. You are an author. You've got a couple of interesting books and probably a bunch of good stories to tell. Before we get to all of that, though, just give us a quick background and let people know who you are and what you've been doing for your life. And then we'll talk about your books.
Great, thanks. Well, I grew older. I don't know if I ever grew up in Philadelphia, and I've been living in Southern California for the past 30 years. And I got a degree in communications from Wake Forest. I've done everything from shopping mall promotions and advertising to international marketing. I produced a couple of local bands in Philadelphia, wrote some music, and I'd written what was a script, and then I tried to get it made into a movie, and that's when, shall we say, my life changed a bit.
Okay, so you've always been a writer, primarily?
I've been around writing most of my life, but basically if it has words in it, I've probably written it at some point.
Okay, and you've been doing this for a living for as long as you've been around?
Writing books not for a living, but writing marketing for a living.
Writing marketing, I see. Okay. One of the things you said on here was you were in the music business for a bit. What were you doing in the music business?
When I first got out of college, my uncle used to own a small record company, which was called Cameo Parkway in the 60s. But this was like in the mid-70s. He sold his company actually to Alan Klein, the manager of the Beatles.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of the records that my uncle, he wrote Teddy Bear for Elvis Presley. He produced and played on The Twist.
Wow.
Volare, Sal Street, songs like that. And then he was trying to get back in the business because they actually had a clause and they're afraid of him just coming back and everybody going back to him. So they made him stay out of the entertainment business for 15 years. And when I tried to do that, then I had a couple of local bands that we got pretty close a couple of times. We opened for people like Rick Danko from the band, Paul Butterfield. We played at locations in Philadelphia like the famous Bijou Cafe and the Academy of Music, and also out at the Main Point where people like Jackson Browne and Bruce Springsteen got their start.
Right. Now, you said your uncle wrote Teddy Bear for Elvis Presley?
Yes.
Wow, that's impressive. Interesting. What was your uncle's name?
Yeah. Bernie Lowe.
Bernie Lowe, okay. All right, so that's cool. And then you've been kind of writing all along. You wrote down. Now, did Standoff come before A Story Almost Told? And then
actually, A Story Almost Told is actually the story of trying to get Standoff. Standoff originally was originally a movie script.
Okay, so you wrote it as a script.
I wrote it.
Okay.
I wrote it as a movie script over 30 years ago.
All right.
And not knowing what I was doing, I had a consultant in New York at the old rock and roll magazine called Cream, which was, the competitor to Rolling Stone.
I remember it well.
And we arranged to get, I thought that Dick Martin from Laugh-In he was doing a lot of TV and directing at that point, would be a good director for Standoff. And the funny thing was, back then, it wasn't online, so you, like the Directors Guild, you had to be a member of the Directors Guild to have the manual so you could find out who was who. Well, shall we say we found the copy? Is that a nice way to put it?
Sure, yeah.
And we were trying to look up how to get in contact with Dick Martins. And my quote consultant wouldn't call the agent. He said, well, you're supposed to letter this, that. And I wasn't having it. This was in my 20s. So I picked up the phone and called. And there was a voice on the other line that goes, hi, do you represent Dick Martin? And he goes, well, I think so. I go, well, and your name is Dick Martin?
Oh,
I go, what? He goes, how'd you get my number? I go, well, I was trying to call your agent. You put your home phone number in the Director's Guild manual of contact. And he goes, hold on a minute. He goes, damn, I'm an idiot. He goes, why'd you call me? And I called him. He goes, that's really nice of you. You want to come over? You want to play golf tomorrow? We'll discuss it. I go, well, I'm in New York. He goes, okay, how about Friday? And so I sent him over a copy of the script, and he loved it. And also, Matty Simmons from National Lampoon loved it, who the guy who founded National Lampoon, produced Animal House.
Okay.
But then the studio heads all said that Standoff was way too far ahead of its time because the Cold War was still going on. And I was saying that the Cold War was going to end without a shot being fired.
Well, you certainly were correct on that. At the time when you talked to Dick Martin, was that when Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In was on? I mean,
20 years after that.
Oh, 20 years after that. Okay.
15 to 20 years. At that point, he was directing a lot of TV comedies. Bob Newhart. He also was really good friends with James Garner, so he actually directed a couple of Rockford Files.
Oh, okay. I didn't know he did all that. I lost track of everybody basically after the show. I didn't know what they did. You know, a few of them hung around.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you lost track of like Lily Tomlin or Goldie Hawn.
Well, no, a couple of them.
Lorne Michaels or some of the other people.
Right. No, but I mean, like Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, I never saw them again, basically.
Basically, they went back. They did a little bit in Vegas, and then Dick went on to do a lot of directing. I mean, he probably directed several hundred TV episodes.
Oh, okay. And Dan Rowan, he died not too far after that.
He died. He died like maybe 10 or 15, about 10 years after. I mean, you know, he did enjoy life. Shall we put it? We'll leave it at that.
Well, I remember watching the show, and I've actually got it on files on my computer that I've been watching. And he was never without a cigarette on that show.
Exactly.
And I thought, oh, this guy had to have died of cancer. And sure enough, I looked him up, and he died of cancer, you know. But never. I mean, there was not one scene where he was not without a cigarette. It was amazing how much he could smoke, I suppose.
Which actually got a big rise out of Dick when he was reading the script, because part of the story of Standoff was that the Americans and the Soviets didn't think they could blow each other off the face of the earth. So my concept was that we would attack each other's vices.
You would attack each other's vices.
And
okay.
They decided, seeing the Russian oligarchs and Politburo took a look at American TV, saw people like Dan Rowan and Jack Parr and Walter Cronkite smoking cigarettes on TV. And so they decided that was the only way they could defeat us. Poison all of our tobacco fields and make it so we couldn't have any cigarettes.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, they wouldn't even need to, because the people died eventually from smoking anyways. A lot of people did. All right. So you got to kind of give us the premise of the book, just without telling too much.
The premise of Standoff is that the Americans and the Russians have decided. Actually, if you go back to the beginning of the book, because the book's a little bit different than the script, I had to add a lot to the book to make it long enough to be a book.
Okay.
What happens is the two people who basically bring down the Soviet Union and the United States are Prince Claude of a country that I invented, sort of like we called it Luxembourg. He's a playboy who lost his country's treasury at casinos and other things. And then there's President Mobangu from a country much like Madagascar in Africa, who at the time of the beginning of our book is actually becoming installed as the Secretary General of the United Nations, and they're afraid that the story that hasn't come out in all these years is going to come out. So they hire a young reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer to go around the world and find out what the story was, because nobody knows what the whole story was. So Mark is sent everywhere from North Carolina to Siberia, all over Europe, up to Canada, to find all the different participants. And many of them are still alive, but of course, it's 30 years on, so some of them have died naturally. And then after going through all the detective story, which has a lot of fun in it, he gets one of the former KGB agents, who is now an acting teacher and gay, which is always good in Russia. A gay Russian KGB agent, I think, is a fun character.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually shows up in Mark's hotel room in St. Petersburg, and sitting there where he gets out of the shower holding what appears to be microphones, telling him that that his room has been bugged, and the FSB, the new KGB, has actually been listening to him, which of course wasn't true, but he was just going to see how he'd react. And so what happens is he tracks everybody down, and then we get back to the whole story, which is the Americans and the Soviets are very much alike. Their defense people, their military people from each country thinks that they have enough nukes to blow the other countries off the face of the earth. But the president and the premier decide that that's not possible. So they have to come up with a plan. Well, the Americans decide the Russians can't live without vodka. So they set up a serum that will make vodka have no alcoholic content, and after staying in the bottle for a couple of weeks, will be absolutely undrinkable. And the Soviets decide that they're going to poison all of our tobacco fields. And both countries are successful, but what they don't plan on is that Prince Claude actually his country's on the Security Council, so he sells his vote to both countries and corners the tobacco market. And the President Mobangu, has a small African nation which is in the Indian Ocean. He gets the Soviets to dig them a deep ocean harbor and turn he had like 5 Coca-Cola plants, and he turns them into state-of-the-art vodka distilleries. And they're producing, they don't even have a place to store all the vodka they're producing. And what ends up happening is the Russians decide that they're tougher than the Americans, so they buy all the cigarettes that the Princeton can produce, and the Americans decide that they're tougher than the Russians, so they buy all the vodka that Malibu can produce. And at the end of the movie, you see that the Russians are smoking like fish, smoking like chimneys. Americans are drinking like fish, and the two little countries have gotten together and basically blackmailed them into realizing that there is no future in having a Cold War. They might as well just call the end of it.
Okay. Yeah.
And basically it's showing that no matter how much power you have, you don't need to get too cocky.
Well, there's a serious message there amongst the kind of crazy antics, yeah?
Well, that's the general thing. I mean, if you sit there and start trying to tell a story, and the story is, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, nobody's going to listen. But if you tell a few jokes, and like one of the classic ones, I'll give you one classic thing is, there's a rather naive KGB agent who's in the main crew in North Carolina, and he just can't stand staying in their house any longer, and he goes to a local bar and gets picked up by a girl who takes him to something he had never seen before, a drive-in movie theater. And shall we say when he got back, he didn't have many clothes and he hadn't seen the movie.
I bet a lot of kids under 30 have never been to a drive-in movie either. That's something that kind of died in the 70s, I think.
Yep. Actually, probably in the 80s or so, from the horror producer Roger Corman made his first millions by making as many horror pictures he could send to drive-ins as he could. As soon as he finished one, he'd start another.
I remember. Yeah, I think it was in the 70s, probably mid-70s was the last time I went to a drive-in movie, and I don't remember the movie either. They were always bad movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so what you have the people. Of course, one of the American spies in Russia, really on the way home from work, had to stop and go to the bathroom, and he tried to cut a line at a store, and all the babushkas start beating him up with their umbrellas.
Well, this sounds really interesting. Would there be any chance that this could be a movie now? Would it? I mean, you said it was way too far.
Absolutely.
It was way too ahead of its time in the 70s, right? Was that when you were pitching it for?
It was the 80s, early 80s.
Early 80s, okay. But now, I mean, it could be.
We've got another Cold War coming.
Well, yeah, I saw that. I was going to ask you about that. I saw that as on one of your things. What do you mean by that? What exactly are you talking about?
Well, I mean, look at what Putin's doing around the world. He's trying to be expansionist.
Yeah.
He wants to have a new Russia.
You think he's going to sort of regenerate the old Cold War again?
He would love to.
I think he would, but whether it happens...
he's the richest man in the world now.
Yeah. Is that right?
Theoretically, he's worth $200 billion. On his $150,000 salary, he became worth $200 billion somehow.
Well, it's interesting, but I mean, I can't see the Cold War repeating itself in the same manner that it was.
It's not going to be the same manner. It's going to be on a different level, but there's a lot of East-West tensions right now. I mean, the Europeans are really worried about their elections being impacted like ours was.
Yeah.
They're worried about... So, I mean, there's a whole lot of things going on. And, you know, everybody likes laughing at America and Russia.
Yeah, true.
And we can learn from the fact that, you know, we don't have to get into another... Maybe it'll help us not to realize how stupid the last one was. Although it doesn't, you know, my story sort of comes down to it showing why, you know, back when we were young, vodka was only drunk by people on Skid Row.
Right.
Now it's $150. Now you can go to the grocery store and buy $50, $100 bottle of vodka.
Yeah, there's designer vodka now.
How'd that happen?
What I don't...
And does somebody actually believe that one morning Gorbachev woke up, called Reagan, goes, Ronnie, I'm tired of the Cold War. Let's call it a tie. And Reagan goes, oh, we can't do that, Mikey. The least we can do is you got to knock down that Berlin Wall. Then we could think about it. He goes, well, if I knock down the Berlin Wall, my grandkids love that band Pink Floyd. So if you can get Pink Floyd to do a concert next to the wall, then we would call it a tie. He goes, okay, we'll call it a tie.
That's about what happened.
$40,000, 40,000 nukes, all millions of troops looking at each other, and they just go, okay, we're going to go home tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, mine makes as much sense as that.
Well, I think yours actually makes more sense. I mean, there wasn't anything particularly funny about Gorbachev and Reagan, but this one has the humor in it, which is going to be more interesting for people. Although, if you go to the election that just recently passed, I think that one was about as comical as we've ever had. So whether or not humor belongs in politics, I don't know. But it's interesting that it came out.
I mean, to many of my friends and a couple of people on the internet, I actually said that Hillary made a very bad mistake for vice president. If she was going to pick an old white guy, she should have picked Al Franken. Because Al Franken, as you know, people don't realize, besides being a great comic, he actually is a pretty good senator, and he also, you know, he graduated from the Kennedy School of International Studies, but he would have had fun with this election.
Oh, well, now, I think
if you have him doing that, if nothing else, it would have been more humorous.
Yeah, okay. I could see that. I could definitely see that.
I mean, Tim Kaine's about as exciting as watching white paint dry on a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, well, she didn't screw up I think she was going for the safe bet because, McCain screwed up so bad by picking Palin. That, as far as I'm concerned, that
exactly.
probably cost him. But so they both, I think Trump but particularly Hillary, I think she wanted to go with the safe.
It's sort of like in football, you talk about, she sort of did she was like a football coach.
Yeah.
She went into a prevent defense. Says the only thing a prevent defense prevents you from is winning.
Yeah, exactly. But even go back to Obama, he did the same thing. Nobody objected to Joe Biden. That was a real safe call. So
yeah, but Joe Biden also is really, really qualified.
Well, true. Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who's the head of the Judiciary Committee, the head of Foreign Relations, and actually in 2003, he and Colin Powell were the two people that were correct about the Iraq War. Colin Powell said, "If you break it, you bought it," and Biden said that if we go into this war, we're going to make Iran the most powerful nation in the Middle East.
Well, there's some truth to that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he wasn't funny though.
No, there was no humor.
If you want to go a little bit into a story almost told, that was a story about how I tried to get that standoff made, which sounds rather boring. Of all the reviews I've gotten on both books, my favorite review was actually one that's not online. It was actually from a group of a focus group I did. I'm on this internet sports and politics type board, and this one guy read a story almost told, and his review was the best. He goes, I hate you, but damn, you can tell a story.
A story almost told is the actual story of trying to get Standoff made into a movie.
Right.
You mentioned Dick Martin. Give us one other anecdote from that book, and then we've got to wrap it up, unfortunately.
Okay, well, one other anecdote from that book is that the IRS and FBI used my book as bait and sting to try to get the major financial person to commit a crime.
All right, how did they do that?
Well, they set themselves up. I had somebody who was going to put up half the money, and they were after him for some other things.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So what they did was they put together, quote, an investment group to put up the other half of the money. And the structure they wanted to put up was patently illegal. It was basically trying to entrap him to saying, okay, we'll take the money. We need the money. We have to do it. And then he actually hired private eyes and found out that they had a party in San Francisco to celebrate maybe being close to having the deal. And this was real cloak and dagger stuff. They sent the glasses that the quote investors did, and we found they came back as, how'd you get the fingerprints of an FBI and IRS agent in your party? And actually, one time we were in Philadelphia. If you're familiar with Philadelphia at all, they have a lot of little alleys where John and I are walking down the alley to go to have lunch at his girlfriend, who was one of the best chefs in Philadelphia, at her restaurant. And he said, just turn around and smile. I go, why? He goes, that guy with the camera is going to keep following us until he gets a picture of you. Oh, yeah, then later on in the book, another anecdote was I was being conned by this guy, and we were in South Africa during apartheid, and the government chased us out of the country.
You were in South Africa trying to pitch the movie?
Actually, we were working on music with this young kid who I found out later was actually conning me. He was actually a pretty good singer, and we're going to be working with Hugh Masekela and a few other people down there. And then all of a sudden they decided they didn't want us there anymore. We're sort of I was paying my dues helping the nephew of the person who was supposed to be financing the movie.
Oh, I see.
By doing that. And I found out that was a con. And of course, it was the 1980s, so Rick James kept popping up.
So
even though he didn't know he was in the movie. But right now, Douglas, I would love, both books are on Smashwords, and I chose Smashwords over Amazon basically because you get paid more.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you go to Smashwords.com and then search for Standoff, you'll find it. And it actually made it to the top 10 best reviewed books out of the 450,000, and now it's dropped down a little bit. It's down to 4.96 out of 5 rating.
Wow, that's great. So it's available on
Smashwords.com.
Smashwords.com. Okay. Both books you said are available there?
Yep, they're both there, and they're for less than a cup of both of them are less than a cup of coffee.
Super. Do you have a Twitter or Facebook you want to
My Twitter is at Noveltunity, NOVELTUNITY. And Facebook, I don't do too much on Facebook for anything like this. I've had so little luck with it that
okay.
I've just given up on it, to be honest with you. And if you want to contact me directly at rick@noveltunity.com.
Okay.
Just Rick and then at Noveltunity, NOVELTUNITY.com. I have to make one disclaimer, though.
Okay.
If you're reading, I am not responsible for any dry cleaning costs or any rug spots. That if you decide to drink some red wine or a milkshake or something while reading Standoff and you spill something or you spit something, I am not responsible for that.
Maybe people should take this while they're on the airplane.
Absolutely. A fantastic read on the airplane. I mean, when you have guys like Maddie, forget about what I think about it. Okay, I don't care what I think about it. But if comedy legends like Dick Martin and Maddie Simmons, who gave you Laugh-In and Animal House, thought it was their statements are very, very funny, I'll listen to them, not me. Not some schlub talking to you on the radio.
Well, we got to wrap this up. Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show. Are you actively shopping this to get it made into a movie at this point?
I would love to be. If anybody wants to help me out, I'll be. Just get in touch with me, or get in touch with Douglas, and he'll get in touch with me.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. Well, good luck with it.
And thank you for having me on, and thanks to everybody for listening.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Ross Jeffries and Rick Karlsrusher. This is Douglas Coleman saying goodbye.
To the mile, you've got to run, not walk. To give us a